primetime game shows,
中国共产党的指导思想
习近平思想
military parades, and bookstores with dedicated sections to the writings of Chinese leader Xi Jinping. These are some of the ways China's propaganda machine has elevated Xi's standing to levels unseen in decades.
伟大光荣正确的中国共产党万岁!
Over his 10 years as leader, Xi has tried to orchestrate the country's rise as a global superpower, despite the recent slowdown in the economy and pushback from the West.
He really has overturned the way China has been governed.
So as Xi prepares to secure a third term as president, we break down these 3 moments along his path to becoming one of China's longest-serving leaders. Xi joined the Communist Party in 1971 and steadily climbed through its ranks over the next few decades. In 2007, he rose to the national stage when he joined the Politburo Standing Committee, a group of China's most senior officials.
The party elite actually was craving a strong leader. When Xi Jinping came to power in late 2012, the party's power brokers got what they wanted, and then some.
The new leader's change in approach was put on display right away when Xi visited the city of Shenzhen to lay out his vision for the country. And he chose a symbolic venue, an exhibition called The Road to Rejuvenation. In a highly orchestrated moment that was broadcast on state TV, Xi was surrounded by some of China's most historical objects.
The display told the story of China's rise from subjugation to triumph under the Chinese Communist Party's leadership.
And here, Xi unveiled the name for what would be the next stage in China's story, with him at its helm.
讨论中国梦
China Dream is a slogan that conveys Xi Jinping's desire to make China a global superpower that is equal to the United States.
In the early stages of his rule, Xi tried to make China's economy more open and driven by market forces.
He actually laid out this very ambitious economic reform program, which called for state companies to operate more like commercial firms and for the government to promote entrepreneurship.
He also shattered taboos in Chinese politics by targeting party elders in a wide-ranging anti-corruption campaign, which ended up being popular with the public.
He honed a very paternalistic public image as Xi Dada, or Big Papa Xi.
And Xi also challenged the U.S. more forcefully than his predecessors. Xi's territorial ambitions in regions including the South China Sea and economic programs such as the Belt and Road Initiative began to clash with U.S. interests.
His China Dream also meant putting China on a collision course with the United States as China strove to be a rival economically, militarily, and politically.
And this collision was about to come to a head when Xi invited President Donald Trump to visit Beijing.
I remember on Trump's first day in Beijing, Xi Jinping and his wife escorted Trump and his wife on a private tour of the Forbidden City.
Xi's plan was to charm his rival and calm the simmering tensions created during his leadership.
There can be no more important subject than China-U.S. relations.
Xi Jinping tried to convince him that there's still so much to gain from having a good relationship with Beijing. But it didn't really work.
A few months after the visit, the U.S. imposed a series of tariffs and trade barriers on China. Washington said it was in response to unfair trade practices and intellectual property theft. This began a trade war that upended markets and reshaped global commerce.
The trade war lasted 2 years, and both sides cut a deal. It didn't really help improve the relationship.
The trade deal was only a temporary truce. Soon after it was signed, the coronavirus pandemic began, sinking the relationship even further.
This horrible thing that was delivered by China, and it was
the U.S. president blamed China for unleashing the virus, a charge Beijing vehemently denied. The growing schism between the countries only made Xi look more powerful at home, as the man who had stood up to the U.S. and he ensured that he would remain at the top by removing term limits in 2018, paving the way for him to become China's president for life.
He tried to roll back China's decades-long evolution toward Western-style, capitalism. This different path is basically socialism, in the spirit of Mao Zedong.
And the spirit of Mao was on full display in 2021 at the Communist Party's centennial celebration in Tiananmen Square.
We saw the TV footage of Xi Jinping wearing this Mao suit and standing behind this, podium adorned with a hammer and sickle.
After his speech, Xi sang along to the Internationale, a socialist song that in China has long symbolized declarations of war by the working class on capitalism. And it soon became clear that this war was being waged at some of China's most valuable tech companies.
Private technology firms have grown tremendously in recent years, but increasingly are seen as challenging Xi Jinping's authoritarian rule.
不能用昨天的办法来管未来。
For Xi, they were gaining too much influence in areas like finance, entertainment, and digital gaming.
It was almost like a 180-degree turn. He now is trying to further enhance the role of the state, the government, in running the economy.
But even as Xi has continued to concentrate his power over the past decade, he's also faced challenges, from the pro-democracy movement in Hong Kong to COVID lockdowns that have added pressure to an economic slowdown weighed by a battered property market. And as Beijing and Washington continue to compete for global influence, Xi is carrying on with his dream of making China a superpower.
As far as he is concerned, China's time has arrived.